Walter Cup rematch in Minnesota took place between Minnesota and the Boston Fleet. Who won this match? We're going to find out. Welcome to a 2025 edition and the return of our coverage of Minnesota Frost hockey on PWHL Recap. I am Scott McGregor. This is PWHL Recap. Let's get rolling. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports from the fan's perspective. Here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. Good evening, PWHL Recap fans. Welcome, one and all, to PWHL Recap. Our coverage of the Minnesota Frost continues as we welcome you in to the first 2025 edition of Minnesota Frost coverage on PWHL Recap. It's Courtney Kessel versus Ken K. Lee. Courtney Kessel versus Ken K. Lee. That's our head coaches. As the Boston Fleet look to rebound from losing game 1 of the season series and also losing the Walter Cup rematch back in Boston earlier this season, right at the start of the season. Back on December the 4th, they lost 2-1 to the Minnesota Frost. Tonight, this game needs overtime. And here we go. As always, now that we've got our head coaches out of the way, we like to go to our matchup between the pipes. Specifically, our matchup in goal. And in goal, Nicole Hensley getting the start for the Minnesota Frost in this one. Lucy Morgan in at backup for Minnesota. On the other side of the ice, Emma Zoderberg back in the backup formation for Boston. And the Green Monster, Aaron Frankel. The Green Monster, Aaron Frankel, getting things going in goal for Boston. So it's Hensley versus Frankel. Courtney Kessel and Ken K. Lee, our head coaches. At the XL Energy Center, home of the Minnesota Frost in the PWHL and the home of your Minnesota Wild in the NHL. We got some great stuff to get to here, so let's jump right into the action. We will take a break in between periods to get into everything that we need to do. We want to get into a women's hockey player of the game. We're going to go by women's hockey player of the game. And when we've actually edited this part, you will see that coming in right around the final segment. We also have the stars of the game coming up. That's coming up a little bit later after our breakdown, our game stats, and I will provide you with my play of the game. But my golly, this had some interesting stuff go down at the home of the Minnesota Wild. So let's jump right into it we'll start with our penalty takers. And first and foremost, no goals were scored in the first period, but both teams each do take a penalty to kick off the game. First, the Fleet go to the penalty box as Sydney Bard goes for tripping 3 minutes and 50 seconds into the first period. Then Britta CS follows a couple minutes later. 9 minutes and 1 second. She is caught 2 minutes for roughing. And that seemed to be one of the common denominators in the penalty summary. In any case, period number 1 belongs to the goaltenders being sharp out of the gate. 8-8. Your shots on goal after one period of play, all even at 8-8 in the shots on goal after one period of play. On to the second period of play. And because there were no penalties to be discovered in the first period, no scoring as well. After 20, Minnesota and Boston remain scoreless, looking for the icebreaker. And speaking of the icebreaker, Claire Budorak breaks the ice in the second period to score Minnesota's game-opening goal, her second of the season. Melissa Chanel Watkins picking up her second assist of the season. The Frost strike first at 9 minutes and 6 seconds into the second period. They strike again with Brooke Bryant scoring her first goal of the season. Lee Stecklin and May Bafferson picking up their first assist of the season. 49 seconds later, we're still in the 9-minute mark, and 9 minutes and 49 seconds after the Claire Budorak goal, Minnesota takes a commanding 2-0 lead. The Fleet guilty of a minor penalty for roughing as Hannah Brandit goes to the box at the 2-minute mark of the second period. She goes 2 minutes for roughing. 2 minutes in to the game's second period. In the later half, Emma Greco receives a 2-minute minor for interference at 6 minutes and 18 seconds. Another Fleet penalty goes out to Kelly Babstock. She gets called for cross-checking. 2 minutes for cross-checking at 11 minutes and 23 seconds in. And then Britta CS. She did have an assist in this game, and we're going to get to that in a second. That's in the third period. But she takes her second penalty of the game. This time she's called for tripping. 16 minutes and 43 seconds in. Boston unable to connect on those two power play opportunities they get. Those first two power play opportunities that they get. And also Minnesota unable to connect on the first 3 power play opportunities. First 4, I should say. First 4, because they only took one penalty. Each team took a penalty once in the first period. Boston took 3 in the second period. Altogether, Boston took 5 penalties, 3 in the second, 1 in the first, and 1 in the third. We're going to get to the third in just a moment, but we want to get to a quick commercial break. So before we get to that, as we are rolling here on PWHL Recap, our shots on goal after 2 periods of play, 14-13 in favor of Minnesota, as Minnesota also leads in the shots on goal after 2 periods, 7-6. So Minnesota is winning in the shot total here, 14-3 at this point in time. Oh, however, that first period, they just changed the number there. They took away the Minnesota 2 shots on goal I mentioned, all even at 8-8. We were not all even. It was the Frost had 6. The Fleet had 8 shots on goal. So the Fleet on top, Minnesota on top after 2 periods of play, 14-13. But they're also out in front 2-0. We'll get to the third period and overtime in our next segment. But we are going to take a break right now. When we return, how did the third period go down and what led to overtime? We're talking about that in just a matter of moments. Stick with us. Overtime and the 3 stars of the game, plus the third period penalties and goal scoring, coming up when PWHL Recap on Sports for Beginners continues in a moment. Frost and Fleet continue in a moment. Stick with us.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down. Nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches.
Looking for conversations on books and more, as well as tutorials on using your favorite devices and applications? You've come to the right place. Join us weekly on Spicy Techie, where Ali and Sienna provide insightful conversations, as well as useful tips and tricks to help you along on your technological journey. To learn more, tune into the show and like the Spicy Techie Facebook page. Search for Spicy Techie.
Dear hockey, dear hockey, dear hockey. Today I would like to share my love, my gratitude, and my appreciation. You have always been there for me and those who have come before me. Side by side, we have had so many emotional moments.
Now memories that are ingrained into my forever. You have helped me grow, learn,
Persevere. You have believed in me,
supported me,
and elevated me. My 24/7, my 365,
and now my future.
and now my future.
And now my future. I'm excited about what comes next.
I know they will be unbelievable, unimaginable, and the unexplainable. But I promise to be strong, powerful, and be an ambassador of all your good. You have only ever given, and now it is my turn to give back. I am here to amplify.
I'm here to unify
I am here to exemplify.
dreams for every little girl across the globe.
Hockey is for everyone.
All my love,
Forever.
always.
Welcome back to PWHL Recap. Happy New Year to all of you, Minnesota Frost and Boston Fleet fans. Final score of this one is 4-3 in favor of Minnesota. But as we hit the third period, which we're going to get into now, as you may remember in the opening of this, we got into our head coaches off the jump as usual. We got into the matchup between the Pipes, rather in goal. We also touched on the first period and second period scoring and penalties. We touched on the first period penalties, no scoring in the first period. We had 2 penalties, 1 to a side in the first period, 3 penalties to the Fleet in the second period, and 1 penalty to Minnesota in the second period. That went to Britta CS. She has 2 penalties in the game. Did not take a third, but she took 3 penalties. 2 penalties, excuse me. All right, let's get things moving on. Down the road, here we go. We go to the third period. Here we go. And this is where craziness happens. It all began with, as we will begin with our penalty rundown, Sophie Shirley picking up a 2-minute minor for hooking, 9 minutes and 27 seconds in. A couple seconds later, just after Boston gets on the board and cuts into the 2-0 lead for Minnesota, off a goal by Hillary Knight, her 4th of the season. Megan Keller, her 4th assist of the season. The Frost take advantage of this power play opportunity, and it's Brooke McGee with her 2nd goal of the season. Britta CS with the assist, her 2nd of the season. Claire Thompson, 1 of 2 assists she had in the game. She gets her 8th assist of the season on the PPG for MIN. And she later gets 1 in overtime, but we'll get to overtime in a second or two. Moving on. Anything the Frost can do, the Fleet can do better. Susanna Tapieni, she now has 2 goals on the season. Her first was an unassisted power play goal, 16 minutes and 43 seconds in. Time of the Brooke McGee goal, 9 minutes and 35 seconds. The power play goal by Susanna Tapieni, her first of the game, comes after Lee Steckline takes Minnesota's only third period penalty 2 minutes for roughing. Time of the penalty, 15 minutes, 59 seconds. Tapieni would score again a little bit later, and uh-oh, here come the Fleet. What was a 3-1 lead has now become a 3-3 tie. Susanna Tapieni strikes again. Her third goal of the season, second of the night. This time she had help on the goal. Daniela P, her first assist of the season. And Hillary Knight picking up her third assist of the season. And just like that, after back-to-back power play goals, one to a side, just like that, we're in a tie game again. This time, a 3-3 tie. Susanna Tapieni strikes twice, and her second goal forces overtime, 17 minutes and 32 seconds in to overtime. I should say to the third period, excuse me. After regulation, shots on goal, not for the game, but for the regulation period, 13-7 in favor of Boston. Boston got the lead 13-7 at the end of regulation. And they also were out shooting Minnesota 27-20 in the shot total for the game at this point in time, if that checks out. I think that does, because they only had 2 shots for Minnesota. Minnesota got 22, and Boston got 28 shots. Speaking of the 22 shots, it was on the second shot on goal that Britta C.S. scored her 4th goal of the season and said, "Good night, everybody," from Minnesota in St. Paul. The Minnesota Frost escape overtime and escape the Fleet again, picking up a W. They pick up a huge W on Minnesota, running rampant through the streets, with Britta CS scoring the game winner in overtime, 4 minutes and 47 seconds in. Kendall Coyne Schofield on the assist, her 4th of the season. Claire Thompson, 2nd assist of the night, 9th of the season. And Minnesota goes on to beat Boston yet again, this time in overtime, 4-3. Last time they played was on December the 4th, 2024. And Minnesota won that one, not in overtime, but they won it 2-1 in regulation. They do pick up, however, a victory in regulation, and in overtime this time around, they pick up a 4-3 W over the Boston Fleet. That's the game we're talking about tonight on PWHL Recap. And a couple more matchups coming up for Boston and Minnesota down the road. Their next matchup will be in 3 games' time. They will take on each other from the same place they did battle tonight in Minneapolis, here at Xcel Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. We are actually recording this not from St. Paul, but that actually is going to be where the action on Saturday afternoon between the New York Sirens and the Minnesota Frost is going to take place. That ought to be a good one. Sirens and Frost are even right now at 1 win apiece and 1 loss apiece. Sirens won the home opener that Minnesota was in, 4-3 in overtime. Sirens lost 4-3 in a shootout at the Prudential Center. What will their next final be? We won't have to wait long for that. Just an off day on Friday and then back at it with New York. So we won't have to wait long. I'm looking forward to that game. I really am. And Saturday, January the 4th, which is this Saturday, means it's a special day for my brother and myself. On Sunday, January the 5th. And that is when the Boston Fleet will take on the Montreal Victoire from the home of the Seattle Kraken at Climate Pledge Arena. Should be a good one between the Fleet and the Victoire. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll get back to all that in a little bit. All right, so the game breakdown done. We broke down the head coaches. We broke down the goaltenders. Now, before we get to the shots on goal total and the penalty and power play, let's jump to our stars of the game. As always, we start with the third star, and the third star is number 17 of Minnesota Frost, Brooke Bryant, a goal, no assists. Second star of the game, Susanna Tapieni, number 77 of the Boston Fleet, 2 goals, no assists for the game. And your first star, 1 goal and 1 assist in the game. It's number 77 of the other side of the ice, Minnesota Frost, Britta C.S. Britta C.S., Susanna Tapieni, and Brooke Bryant, your 3 stars of this game between Boston and Minnesota. Minnesota has beaten Boston twice. And as we move on to take our next break of the program out of 3 breaks that we're going to be taking, I want to quickly remind you, as always, of our game stats, our shots on goal to the exact, and power play. Boston ends up winning the shots on goal tally 28-22. They go 4 for 5. They go 4 for 5 on the penalty kill, 1 for 3 on the power play. Minnesota 1 for 5 on the power play. They go 2 for 3 on the penalty kill. spending 6 minutes in the box, taking only 3 penalties. 5 penalties taken by Boston, equivalent for 10 minutes in the box for Boston. And just before we break, our officials tonight at the XL Energy Center, Jen B, Kyle Bauman, wearing numbers 4 and 18. Those were your referees. Your lines person were Sarah Buccaneer, number 66, and number 95, Greg Offerman. Greg Offerman and Sarah Buccaneer Sarah Buccaneer. There we go. Okay. Sarah, if I pronounce your last name wrong, I apologize. Same thing for Jen and Kyle and Greg. If I pronounce the name wrong, I apologize in advance. All right. Those are the officials of tonight's game at XL Energy Center. Women's Hockey Player of the Game coming up next on PWHL Recap. Before we get there, it is time for the play of the game, and we'll do that when PWHL Recap continues with the Frost and the Fleet. Plus, we set up Sirens, Frost next time on PWHL Recap, and what the upcoming 2025 schedule for the 2024-2025 season of PWHL hockey as it rolls on. Stick right with us. We'll be right back in just a few short moments. Stick with us.
Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map.
Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches.
Dear Hockey, dear Hockey, dear Hockey. Today I would like to share my love, my gratitude, and my appreciation. You have always been there for me and those who have come before me. Side by side, we have had so many emotional moments.
Now memories that are ingrained into my forever. You have helped me grow, learn,
Persevere. You have believed in me, supported me, and elevated me. My 24/7, my 365,
and now my future.
and now my future. And now my future. I'm excited about what comes next. I know there will be unbelievable, unimaginable, and the unexplainable. But I promise to be strong, powerful, and be an ambassador of all your good. You have only ever given, and now it is my turn to give back. I am here to amplify.
I'm here to unify
I am here to exemplify.
dreams for every little girl across the globe.
Hockey is for everyone,
All my love,
forever.
always.
It's time for tonight's Women's Hockey Player of the Game. Who had the best game tonight? Let's find out right now on the Sports for Beginners podcast. A beautiful, 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 beautiful message that kick-started the inaugural season. Now we have celebrated 1 year of PWHL hockey. The 2024-2025 season began on November the 30th, 2024, and it all began on January 1st, 2024, New Year's Day, 2024, with Toronto and New York dropping the puck on the inaugural season. This time, the first game in January belongs to Minnesota and Boston. And it's a 4-3 overtime win for the Minnesota Frost. They win the second game out of the many meetings they will be playing against the Boston Fleet. And it is about time for the play of the game. Before we get there, as you heard prior to the message from the PWHL, as we came back, you heard Thomas talking PWHL Women's Hockey Player of the Game. And that's what we are going to kick things off with in this segment here. Final segment coming up in a matter of moments. And that will be when we discuss Siren, Frost, plus what else is coming up in the 2024-2025 season in the 2025 era of that part of the season. We will get to all of that in a matter of moments. So without further ado, let's go right to our Women's Hockey Player of the Game. Today, as we are recording this on the day of the game, tonight I should say, my Women's Hockey Player of the Game for Minnesota, I'm going to go with Nicole Hensley. I thought Nicole played really, really well. 3 goals given up. Her third period was not really a good period, but her and Erin Frankel both had a really nice start to the game. They had a really nice start to the hockey game. Very nice start. No goals given up. And a very nice start for the Frost and the Fleet. I was going to say Penguins there, but we're talking about the PWHL. So here we go. Frost and Fleet, just to reiterate there. I thought both goaltenders played well in the first period. The third period for both teams, rather the overtime period, not necessarily a good period for either team goaltender, but I still think they did well. So for Minnesota, I'm going to go with Nicole Hensley. 3 goals given up, 64 minutes and 47 seconds played, 25 saves on 28 shots. She is going to get my Women's Hockey Player of the Game for this game. Moving on to Boston, but not before we give an honorable mention to Brooke Bryant. 2 shots on goal in the game, one of which went in. And she has a goal in this one. She also hit the 3 stars of the game. For Boston, an honorable mention to the Green Monster, Erin Frankel. But we're going to go with, I'm going to go with, rather, Hillary Knight. An assist, a goal, which tallies to 2 points. 5 shots on goal for Hillary Knight. She was a +1. And even though she's the captain of Boston, I thought she played really, really well tonight. So the recipients of Women's Hockey Player of the Night, Player of the Game for this game. For the Boston Fleet, Hillary Knight, the captain. And for the Minnesota Frost, Nicole Hensley, with honorable mentions to Aaron Frankel, and of course, I wanted to talk about Brooke Bryant. There we go. Almost lost it, but I quickly got it right back. All right. Time now for the play of the game. Disclaimer for those who listen to Penguins postgame, and of course, for those who listen to Penguins hockey on the Penguins radio network, presented by S&T Bank. Those are brought to you by, during the post-game show, they are brought to you by Rivers Casino, Pittsburgh's entertainment destination. We are not sponsored by that, but I will be opening the floor to Rivers Casino, Pittsburgh's entertainment destination, or Ford, the official car, truck, and SUV of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Your home of the Pens, and the best Pens coverage is on WXDX FM Pittsburgh, an iHeart radio station. All right. With that being said, we are not sponsored by those, which is why we brought them right to you right off the jump. I'm going to bring you my play of the game now that we've brought the disclaimer out of here, and we got to our Women's Hockey Player of the Game right off the jump. I'm going to go with Susanna Tapiani. Her power play goal really, I guess you could say, it kind of stunned Minnesota. Because before you knew it, if you blinked, Susanna Tapiani would strike once again. 17 minutes and 32 seconds right after her 16-minute and 43-second goal. And ultimately, we end up in a tie in the third period when Minnesota's hanging on to a 2-goal lead. I should say a 1-goal lead. They were hanging on to a 2-goal lead after the goal by Brooke McGee. Brooke McHugh, I should say. That's what I should have said earlier on. I apologize on that. Anyways, they really should have kept their foot on the gas pedal here because they were up 3-1 and up by 2 goals, and they blew that. But after they blew that, Susanna Tapiani said, "That's enough. We've been down by 2 in the game for the longest time. I'm not letting that happen again." She scores twice, her second and third goal of the season. But her second goal of the season and the goal on the power play for the Fleet is good enough for my play of the game. And with that being said, now time for a word from our good friends over at Broadcast Map. We'll be back in 30 seconds after this from Broadcast Map as we wrap up PWHL Recap, setting up Sirens and Frost. That's next on PWHL Recap. Plus, we set up the upcoming schedule leading up to Frost and Fleet once again from St. Paul in Minnesota, the home of the Minnesota Wild at XL Energy Center on Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. All that is next when we wrap up in 30 seconds. Stick with us. We're back in 30 seconds after this from Broadcast Map. Stick with us.
Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map.
All right, thank you very much, Ali, for your continued support on Sports for Beginners and as well as your support for Weekly in Sports. That program, Weekly in Sports, will begin in a couple days' time in its own podcast feed that we started launching on December 30th, 2024 to kickstart the countdown to our first ever podcast episode on the podcast feed for Weekly in Sports. That comes your way on Thursday, January 30th, 2024 in 4 Thursdays from now. We'll be recording it on Wednesday ahead of the Utah Hockey Club game between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Utah Hockey Club. And that's going to be a busy day for us. So we'll get you ready for that game at the Delta Center and so much more that has gone on even since we got to the new year. One more year of waiting before women basketball makes its mark in the WNBA. One more year of waiting. And speaking of that, as we roll on here on this show, if you want to check out anything to do with the WNBA and specifically the Toronto Tempo, why not check out Bringing Home the W, a great program. And honestly, I can't wait for Toronto Tempo to become a real thing. I cannot wait for them to drop. Not drop. I cannot wait for them to tip off. I really can't. Can it get to 2026 already? I'm really looking forward to how this team in the WNBA shapes up. So once again, check out the Toronto Tempo's podcast, Bringing Home the W, a WNBA Toronto podcast hosted by Tanya Casella G and co-hosted by Josh McConnell. Follow the journey of not just any sports team, but Canada's first WNBA team. Subscribe now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe now, or you'll be missing out on a countdown to quite a inaugural season, I'm sure. All right, with that being said, let's continue on here. We are just about done here on PWHL Recap for 2025's first edition of the program. But before we go, we had a word from Ali, and we'll get to that in a second. We'll get to some announcement of that in a second. But I promise you we will set things up here for you. So that is what we are going to do. All right. here we go. The next time you will hear my voice will be after the game on Saturday, January the 4th, 2025, when the New York Sirens go head to head once again with the Minnesota Frost in the same place the Frost did battle with the Fleet today at the XL Energy Center and beat the Fleet 4-3. So they will play the Sirens on January 4th. Game time is 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, and of course the rest is history on that. I'll leave you with the Eastern time and Central time. After that, the Boston Fleet take on the Montreal Victoire on January 5th, 2025, a special day for myself and our host of On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Game is at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific, and that is at Climate Pledge Arena, the home of the NHL's Seattle Kraken. It's the Montreal Victoire taking on the Boston Fleet. That ought to be a good one. Down at Climate Pledge Arena to kick off a new season of PWHL Takeover. The New York Sirens will be back in action against the Ottawa Charge on Tuesday, January the 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central at the home of the New York Sirens and the home of the NHL's New Jersey Devils, the Prudential Center, and last but certainly not least, part of that doubleheader on January the 8th at 7 p.m. Pacific time, we will have the Toronto Scepters take on the Montreal Victoire from Rogers Arena in Vancouver. Let me just check. Rogers Arena. Is that Vancouver or is that Edmonton? Rogers Arena. Is that? Oh, yes, that is in Vancouver. So from BC, Vancouver, BC, the Scepters take on the Victoire. And we will actually have our own little PWHL takeover. That will be during a Sunday Mountain Time action as the Minnesota Frost battle the Montreal Victoire. We will check in on that. All right. Time now for the update from Broadcast Map, and then we'll get back to setting up not Scepters, Frost and Siren. We've kind of done a little bit of setting that up as we've gone on here on the program, but I will provide you with my thoughts so far on the season series between the Frost and, of course, the Sirens. But the one thing we know for sure, the one thing we do know for sure, the one thing that we do know for sure is that, first of all, we do know that we do know that Minnesota holds a 2-0 lead in the season series. Well, technically, we're all tied up, I should say. Technically, we're all tied up because the Sirens beat the Frost last time they played at the XL Energy Center. The Sirens got beat when the Sirens were at home back in December. On the 22nd, just before we hit the new year. And also, it had to go down to a shootout. So I guess we're left wondering, what's the final score going to be of Saturday's game on January 4th? We're going to find all the answers out, I'm sure, in due time. All right, to wrap us up here, what's new on Broadcast Map? Here's what Ali had in his latest update, and this will take us to the closing points of the show. Happy New Year! Broadcast Map returns January 6th. That's this Monday. He actually posted this yesterday on Thursday, January 2nd, 2025, and says, "Hello. I would like to take this opportunity to wish you a happy new year and all the best for 2025. May this year be filled with prosperity and good health. Lots of exciting things ahead for me this year, including more Broadcast Map. I return with new shows on January 6th. I will be joined by Matt Condell. Matt Condell is joining the studio from the Sound Off Network. They will talk Buffalo Bills, Justin Trudeau's future, and technology. Seems like a pretty packed house of content in just one episode, Ali. I'm really looking forward to it, and Happy New Year to you as well. Happy New Year to all of our listeners as we are in the new month and the start of a new year. You can check it out on Sienna T Radio. Check it out on the Broadcast Map YouTube channel, all major podcasting platforms. But please note, you can also check this stream out on JC Hosting. The stream will only work when there is programming on the air. Check him out on Spicy Techie Weekly with Sienna Tregiani. And Happy New Year to Sienna Tregiani as well as all the members at Sienna T Radio. That's our update from Ali. Looking forward to a great conversation with him. And Matt Condell of the Sound Off Network. Of course, Matt, if I pronounced your last name wrong, I do sincerely, and I mean sincerely, apologize. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode of PWHL Recap. Thank you so very much for being here with us when we started in the inaugural season for PWHL Recap. Thank you so much for joining us when we've had it here on the podcast now in 2025. And thank you so much for being here with us. If you've been with us for Sports for Beginners for the past 2 years that we've been doing the show, I really do appreciate it. Our time is up here on PWHL Recap we will be back with you for the Frost and the Sirens. Round 3, as they would say in wrestling. Round 3, fight. Or in this case, boxing, to be more specific. Round 3, fight. We'll find out what the final score of Frost versus Sirens is in due time. Until that timeline, my name is Scott McGregor saying good night, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the podcast. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a good evening whenever you may be tuning into this show. And as always, hockey is indeed for everyone. I will catch you on the next episode of PWHL Recap, following our next episode of Penguins postgame between the Penguins and the defending Stanley Cup champion, Florida Panthers. That comes your way on Friday. My name is Scott McGregor, and this is PWHL Recap. We'll see you next time. Frost, Sirens, next time on PWHL Recap. Love one another. Good night. Thank you so much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.